Hi, and welcome to the 11th episode of Keen Minds, and our third full episode of the hiatus project that we're working on. We are delving into the first of three parts in which we're tackling the hardest issues between Elizabeth and Tom Keen. These are going to be a lot of things that the fandom tends to argue about, and what we see is a lot of differing opinions of it. And so this is going to be Tessa's and mine's opinion on these. And we're really excited to get into this because, well, I definitely love the
We
Keens.
love diatribe, and we have a slight tinge of masochism.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
Yeah, and um, I think that this we haven't been saying this lately, but it's probably a good thing to remind our listeners of who we are in terms of fandom. I am Tessa. I have a blog, criminally sane, and I am a theorist. I am not a shipper. I love the Kings individually or together, but not because I ship them. I love them because to me they represent every single one of the themes of the show.
And I'm Jen, aka Takata Saiko, on all the various sites online. And I am a shipper. I'm a Keen Squared shipper, and I also delve quite a bit. I'm also a writer, so I do a lot of character development is really my forte. And so I love the development in between Tom and Liz and with the various characters on the show. And redemption arcs are some of my very favorites. So,
And we got a big one here.
well, I mean, because you have the redemption arc for Tom within himself, but you also have the Umbrella redemption arc for the Keens together because they are
Hmm.
both, as much as people love to put it all on Tom, there was a
Oh no.
lot between Liz and Tom. But both parties were at fault. We can talk about the various levels of fault, but even before everything came out, Liz was not a perfect angel in their marriage. A lot of
No.
that self-centeredness, the what's the word I'm looking for?
Narcissistic
The
tendencies.
narcissistic tendencies that she spoke about in the pilot, and that we've seen. We
I
saw
mean,
that in
I
their marriage. We definitely saw that showing very strongly in their marriage when she was focused in on she you could tell it was coming up when in the pilot she said, "I'm not going to let this new job get in the way of our family. You believe me, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, honey."
mm.
And
Well,
so
I think it's important when we talk about Liz is to remind ourselves because I think some people tend to gloss over this, her own profile of herself. My colleagues call me sir. They think I'm a bitch. Like most kids who raise themselves, I can display narcissistic behavior. I can be withdrawn, disconnected. I have a deep yearning to understand and relate to the criminal mind. Oops, because you left behind that you actually are a thief and you grifted and you have done whatever you have done. Um, and relate to the criminal mind. I'm board certified in forensic psychology, and yet I operate under the delusion that I can rewrite my past by having kids of my own. So she's not even saying, hey, I'm just this do goody girl.
no, and it gets glossed over quite a bit from what I've seen in the fandom. From I tend to
Mm-hmm.
talk to all every corner of the fandom, shippers, non-shippers, Lizingtons, Keenlers, Keen Squared, folks that don't ship at all, folks that don't ship Liz with anybody particularly. Their main ship is something like Saram. I have a wide variety of people I talk to because that's how theories are born. That's how you figure things out. Is you bounce ideas off people and you get a wider view and a wider thought process on things. And so it's interesting to see
Mm.
how everyone views Liz. And so this series that we're doing here with Tom and Liz is definitely Tessa's and mine's personal approaches to Liz and
Mm.
Tom.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that distinguish, and I've seen that what people tend to ship or think about the show, it's it's not so much who Tom is or who Wrestler is, or it's about how they view Liz. And I think that is a fundamental difference. I think Keen 2 shippers and people who ship most of the theories tend to see Liz as a deeply gray character.
Yes, I would agree with that. Just from what I've seen, that tends to be we don't tend to see her, and this isn't a knock to anybody's ship, by the way. I just want to kind of throw that out there because
it is a way it's viewed.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I mean, the majority of Keen Squared shippers that I know don't view her as any sort of damsel in distress that needs saving, that needs protection, particularly. We view her as a very strong female role who has been thrown into a very difficult situation and has a lot of darkness of her own that she's wading through and coming to accept parts of herself that that she needs to, and in doing that, learning to balance herself rather than trying to shift all the way to the white, end of the black and white spectrum.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think that the damsel in distress, people who see her as a damsel in distress tend to ship other things and tend to see her as a do-gooder that got sidetracked by Red and was always a person who did things by the rules. I think that's what she said. And I think you mentioned in another one of our podcasts a very interesting thing about Liz, the way she talks about Sam and the way she acts towards Sam are very different.
Yes, the way she portrays certain things and her actions sometimes tend to clash. I think a lot of times Liz has spent a lot of time under her own masks of what she wants to be. When she decided she wanted to become a profiler, I think she just sort of settled into this persona of the law-abiding citizen. She married a teacher, sweet and innocent. What was it? She made a comment at one point. She goes, Tom is underpaid and overworked, and yet he wakes up every morning with a smile on his face because he's just a good guy, or something like.
He doesn't live in the terrible world we do.
Yeah, and so I think that while I think that she was actually attracted to the man underneath the persona of Tom Keen, to Tom at his core, I think that basically the masks that both of them were wearing matched. And then the people underneath those masks also matched. They have shed, at this point, the masks that they were wearing and found that they work well together.
I agree at 100% there.
Do we want to start in from the beginning with Tom and Liz? And we're going through...
Let's do, because basically what we're doing now is talking on the on a general, what do we think about Liz? Because I think sometimes people delve into the scenes and the things said, and they tend to forget about the action sometimes matter more than that. So basically what we're doing is talking about the before.
Yeah, absolutely. And the actions in a show that is just, chest deep in spycraft and lies and misdirection and red herrings and everything that the Blacklist is, you have to look at actions, because actions are going to always speak louder than words. Tom sat there in the middle, while she was interrogating him in their dining room after, the Poplovich brothers dropped him off, duct taped and tied to the chair, and told her that, basically that he felt sorry for her, that he, implying that he never loved her and this and that. And then, anybody that liked them at that point, their heart was breaking during that moment because it sounded true. And yet you see, as things pan out, you don't know till later that he's trying to help her when he kidnaps her at gunpoint. Best laid plans. Gotta love it.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. Don't miss that one.
We will get there, we promise. That is definitely on the agenda. But, you see, especially in season 2 is when she releases him from the boat, you start to see him, that he may have said those words. It's kind of like the words he said to Red that we went over a couple of podcasts ago. When he said, Lizzie's dug her own hole. When she threw me in that hellhole, we were done. I'm done. I'm not coming to save her. The words were being spoken, What were the actions? He hopped on a plane, he burned his identity, the Christoph Mannheim
Mhm.
identity, and he went to the feds. He didn't go to Bud, he didn't go to anybody else. He went to the feds because Elizabeth Keene needed him. And so
Exactly.
the actions are always going to speak
With
louder than words in this show with
and you
everybody.
have to look. Yeah, you have to look in every single character for the actions. And I think then let's start from our first, because I think the first thing you have to speak is from from the time Red hires Tom until the time Red fires him, because their relationship became intimate. Because there's not a lot that we know about that time.
Very little. We know that Red and Tom never physically met during that point.
Correct?
Um, and that and that he hired him to be a friend of a friend at a distance and keep an eye on her. I think
Hmm.
that's really all we know.
Well, there is a little incident in timing, because the timing of the blacklisted timeline is very interesting. And at that particular time, Liz, this is a little either right on time or a little after. Liz has that suicide attempt that she speaks of when she's undercover as Angela in Dr. Lina's Creel. And that she did this because Frank was cheating on her. I find interesting that that is the moment that Red chooses to get Tom helping her, or making sure that she's safe. So there is something there also, besides the fact that Red was getting in trouble and his assets and his business were being attacked, and he thought to protect his vulnerabilities. But the timing also tells me Red was concerned. A suicide attempt in a girl that you erase her memories because she shot you, and whatever else happened that night, it's something to be concerned.
Oh, absolutely. We've talked about before that we don't know. I mean, it'd be great if anybody that listens has psychological training and has something to weigh in on this. That would be fantastic. But I mean, not that anybody gets their memories erased like Red did, but
It
in
is
general,
actually true, though.
that that someone that's not able to go through in a healthy fashion and cope with those memories because they've been repressed, and yet is expected to act like a functioning member of society without any issues. A normal person. Liz never had a chance, honestly, and from
It's
what I
amazing.
could see.
I think she's done pretty well. So Red, he gets involved with Tom. Tom meets her. They meet in this restaurant in Georgetown. They must have been visiting because she was living in New York at the time, and or maybe not. Maybe they didn't.
That whole bit right there is incredibly confusing because you have met in a coffee shop in Georgetown. She's supposed to be living in New York with the what
Mobile
division?
unit,
Yeah,
but she
the
hasn't
mobile place.
graduated then.
No, she has not gone to Quantico yet.
No, no, and even graduated from. She graduates. Uh, she already had met Tom, or that's about the right time when she graduates. So it is entirely possible that she went to school in Washington, D.C., because also remember, she was dating Nick, and Nick was in D.C. So it's entirely possible that they were in D.C. when she graduates. They both move to Rochester, New York, because
I
it's
guess
not
it's
New York,
possible.
New York, it's Rochester. That the streets coincide, the developments coincide, all that coincides. So it's Rochester, New York, not New York, New York.
Yeah, I will take your opinion on New York down here in Texas.
It all sounds the same. I know, compared to you guys, we're tiny.
Oh, well, yeah. You drive 8 hours, you're still in the same state here.
We're in the same county.
uh,
Um,
could be
so
in some places.
Red Firestorm, and we're talking about maybe 2008 that Red Fires. Let me look at here. And
I think they
Red
met in 2010.
2010, and Red, and that's thereabouts 10-11 when Red fires him. And
Around the time that they got engaged seems to be when Red fired him.
yeah, so the probably with the I have my head canon. This is it, that when Tom goes to Paris, he goes and Red fires him.
See,
Although
I've got a very similar headcanon that that he went to, that somehow at some point Berlin reached out to him about that time period, right after he got fired, found that out and reached out to him, and that he went to Paris to basically offer up his services as a double agent, to protect Liz, and that he was brushed off. I mean, there's absolutely nothing to confirm that, but that's my lovely little headcanon running there.
Well, about that entire how Berlin hired Tom has some discrepancies in the stories, both told by Red to Liz, what Red and the Major discussed, what Red and Tom discussed. So there is in what Berlin and Red discuss, and what the Fitch and Red discuss. So there are always a little detail that is off. That to me is something that will be picked up later and will prove to be significant. But at any rate, because Red says to the Major, Berlin offered you twice for the services, and you allow him to turn. So I'm not sure exactly how Berlin got to have Tom's contract, but he did. So here we are. Tom has married. They're engaged. He goes to Las Vegas, but truly he goes to Paris, and they are engaged, and he's working for Berlin. So what are your thoughts on where the characters are at that point in time?
At that point, I mean, we've already made comments before in prior podcasts that Berlin didn't seem interested in hurting Liz, and I think that's probably, I would assume Tom was ready for that to be a scenario, and I mean, if he'd already burned Raymond Reddington, I don't think he was going to have any issue turning on Berlin. I mean, Red has proven how dangerous he was, and I don't care what Tom said to Jesse when he was over the spider tattoo guy. When he said, your boss is what's the line? Your boss is.
Okay. The thing I work for is the guy I work for is he's more cautious, more controlled, and he's far more ruthless.
And I don't agree with that. Like, I think that he was just bluffing there. I think that he is well aware how dangerous Red is. I think he downplays it as, because what else is he gonna do? Yeah, I'm terrified of this man. Because he admits to Red how terrified he was at one point, and that's the only time we actually get it, and that's the one time I actually believe him when he's talking about Red to other people. Liz seems to think he underestimates Red, and obviously he seemed to underestimate Red to Jesse. But I think
that's a little testosterone talking. Yeah,
they do have a bit of a
Red people towards Red tend to have two very opposite things. Either they are terrified of Red, or they're completely underestimate Red until he comes right in their faces and with one of those crazy smiles, and then people are like, okay, bad choice.
And then they get a bullet to the head or the chest or whatever he feels like.
Or they have to sing songs in the woods or whatever. Terrifying things happen to them. But I think that you're right. And one thing that we have to establish as canon is that Tom got with Liz because he fell in love with Liz. We have the Major saying it to him. We got Gina saying it to him that she was dumped because of Liz. So there is no room to say, oh, he's doing something, he's undercover. No, that is the truth. That is established in canon.
Absolutely. And you've got this man who we have been told time and time again had never known love, did not understand love, and he's struggling through these new emotions. And I'm trying to remember exactly. I'm not going to be quoting off verbatim here, but he was talking in an interview at one point, and he said something about, someone like this has never known love, that when suddenly he finds himself in love, the reaction's going to be kind of odd, kind of like this.
That's Nauf.
It was Nauf. Yeah. Like
the blacklist exposed.
Was it? Okay, but it was kind of like being sick, I think, is what the comment he made.
Yeah.
It was
like you would think that you're sick.
Yeah, and so because he doesn't know what it is, and so I think it probably took time. Took Tom time. Wow, I'm trying to say that 10 times fast. To to one realize what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and then two, admit it to himself. And I would assume that he spent quite a bit of, and he kind of indicated this when they were discussing it in the first interrogation she had with him in the dining
Mm-hmm.
room, where he said, I wanted it I wanted it not to work, but it did. And I just felt sorry for you. And I think that there was probably a lot of that going on. He was like, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. I should not be
My
attracted.
job is not to get involved.
Yeah, this is not my job. My job is everything. Why am I pulled to this woman? Because I've always had a bit of a headcanon that for Tom, sex was just sex before Liz. I'm sure that he and Gina had a lot of fun, but there were never any emotional connections, and that comes from the conversations with about Knopf and such, that he said that you never loved before.
Yet,
But
yet
then,
one of the things about that interesting is that you remember Gina's faces watching him getting in the church to be
mhm.
married. That was heartbreaking. I think that the major had a couple of defective, or he wasn't as good doing
Oh, I
training.
I knew that Gina had deeper feelings for Jacob before. I mean, when she went after Liz, it takes a hard man
Mhm.
to kill someone with a knife. She could have shot her, but she wanted that close in, hand to hand. She wanted to slit her throat. It was all about, you took him from me.
Hmm. Even if she had no idea what she was doing,
Oh
she
no,
was
and
angry.
that's what I feel like Gina was that way there, and I feel like Tom probably went through quite a bit of that at the beginning of the
Mm.
relationship, of not understanding why he was doing the things he was doing. But you know,
I
suddenly
think
he's
they
having
were
dinner with
really,
her. Suddenly he's going and having drinks with her. He's walking her home. He's helping her cheat on her boyfriend.
and I think that there is something there that Tom found a reason. And I have my own ideas that Red never asked him, like, why did you get involved? But I have a feeling that when Tom got involved, it was, I'm gonna say, probably three parts of his own being attracted to without really understanding what was going on, because love will feel like you're sick. um, but a quarter of that would be his that he saw something in the guy she was dating, because remember at that time she was dating somebody, I think is Nick. um because then he mentioned that, I saw you and you're in your underwear making coffee in her house or something like that. So
Yeah.
I think that there was something in there that he saw, that he at least rationalized it to himself, that he was doing his job by getting Liz away from this man,
Oh,
if it was Nick
absolutely.
or somebody else.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what I mean when I say that I think that that he didn't quite know and quite admit to himself what was going on. Exactly what you just said, that he rationalized it. And then by the time he figured out, he was too far in. He was head over heels for her. It was the first woman he's ever loved. And suddenly he was willing to betray Raymond Reddington. He was willing to take on the Berlin job to protect her. And I'm sure that he told himself time and time again, when it comes down to it, I'll tell her. I will. But this is a man that has he obviously doesn't like, at that point, I don't think he probably liked who he was under the mask, because otherwise, how would you be able to spend that much? Why would you? That was the selling point for Bud. I can teach you to be anybody.
Hmm.
And so Jacob Phelps was not overly interested in being himself.
In fact, Jacob Phelps in Tom Keene was an identity developed not to attract Liz. Liz was not attracted to the little loser, nerdy
Hey,
school
don't
teacher
diss nerds.
who,
Don't diss
who
nerds.
I don't understand, but that's what, she was going for the bad guys. She was going for Frank, the cheater, and from Bronny the cheater, and Frank the grifter. Liz had no place in her little gray heart for nerdy school teacher who takes his lunch in a lunchbox. There was this was there was nothing in what Tom had created this character that was designed to attract Liz. In fact, if anything else, it was he was designed to be the friend, that Liz would never even look at him twice. So there is so much in there that happened that was out of his control. He had designed. He's an expert in designing a persona that fits the problem he's at. And Tomkin was perfect for what he had to do, protect Liz from a distance. And he got involved with her and he started falling for her. And I'm sure that he was telling himself, I'm just doing this because it's my job. I'm doing my job. I'm good at this. Then I think that when Red fired Tom, I'm sure that Red never told him, like we said in the previous podcast, Red never told him, hey, you know what? This is my daughter we're protecting here. And so make sure that she's safe. I'm sure Red told him something like, there is somebody I need protecting because they're important for my business. And you need to keep an eye on her, keep her safe for me. So what is Tom left to think when he fires him because he got involved with her? This guy is using this woman because he never even allowed me to say, hey, you know what? I did this because nothing. Out. You're gone. And now Red Reddington, it's my enemy. So there's going to be something to be said for somebody who's willing to do that without even understanding his love.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the, I will admit, that's one of the things that draws me to Tom, is the fact that he was willing to give up, in the end, and it took him a while to get here, but that's character development. If everybody was there all at once, it would be a really boring story. But he was willing to give up everything he'd known. Up until 14 years old, when the Major picked him up, he had nothing. He was struggling with just trying to survive. He had stolen a car and credit cards and was on the run, you assume from Chicago, since his file said Chicago. Somehow he got to New York City. I don't know if he drove the car all the way there, if he stole it from his foster family. Who knows? Drove the car there and he got picked up stealing purses on the street. If Bud had not picked him up, he would have been in juvie that day because the guy was catching up to him. And so Bud was the first person in his life, as far as we can tell, that said, maybe you have something to give. And suddenly he was giving everything to him. He gave everything to the job. He was useful. For the first time in his life, he was accepted for the first time in his life for a skill set that he had, that he developed to be useful. That was everything. A promo came out season 2, I think when he was under the Christoph Mannheim persona. And one, it was like Tom Keene, this, and this. And one of the things was, this man loves his job. And that's true. That was all he had in life. That was everything. And time and time and time again, he has been willing to give that up for Liz.
Yeah.
And that's impressive to me.
Yeah. I always say that, as much as people say that wrestler and him has nothing in common, that's not true. They both have a deep commitment to the job. The job is defined differently. The rules are defined differently, but the commitment to the job is very similar. So we're here. They got married. Berlin thinks that he married Liz as a job. He can't tell Berlin, I'm in love with this woman, or Berlin will not trust him. So 2 years pass. He hears nothing from Berlin. He has this little code book. He sends information about, was it what they asked about Liz, which, could be somebody else asking about Liz through Berlin. But that's what he's sending. He has heard nothing. And then Red comes in.
That must have been incredibly easy for him just to slip into that persona and just kind of ignore the fact it's ever going to come to head at any point. And, how much easier it got at that point to go, I can live out the rest of my days with her. I can marry her. I can grow old with this woman. And I think he did get to that point where he was like, he's just never going to show up and nothing's ever going to happen. And I've got my picket fence that I never knew I wanted. We're about to adopt a child together. And that became his reality. And I don't think before that he ever wanted it, but suddenly when he had it, he did want it.
I think that in that adoption lays one of the reasons Red came into Liz's life. I think it was that child to be adopted. They always say, when Red has a way of always answering actually something that is a real answer, just that it doesn't look like the answer the way he says it and the way he changed the subject later. But when Liz asked him, he said, um, 2 years ago, your husband reached to a forger that I know and got 3 passports. And Liz interrupts him. That's it? He got passports? So Red drops it. But that is the reason he's giving for coming into his life, into her life. Why? It makes no sense if the passport were for all for Tom. Tom going would have been like, yay, I got rid of him. Now, once he's gone, I can kill him and, my secret is safe and I'm sure she will recover. Yet, he comes and starts doing this, gives up his freedom because of those 3 passports telling him Liz is in danger. In danger of what? Berlin obviously is not hurting. He doesn't know who Berlin is, but he's obviously not hurting Liz because they've been married for 2 years. Tom had been following Liz for another 2 years, so that's 4 years together. Nothing have happened. Tom is not a danger for Liz, and obviously Berlin is not a danger for Liz. Otherwise, he already knows her. He knows where she is. He could get her. So those 3 passports, there is no other explanation that fits except those 3 passports for Liz, Tom, and a baby. You're going to adopt a baby. A baby's a baby's a baby. They're going to say, undress the baby, make sure it's a boy. It's a baby. They all look alike, you know. Take the picture, swaddle the baby. Nobody's going to know. So I think that's what it was. I think that's what precipitated on Red that Tom was thinking of running with Liz. And to run with Liz, he had to have thinking about telling Liz.
Yeah, and like I said, I do think that he probably had times again and again in which he wanted to tell her. One time in particular that I really think that he was about to tell her was when he found out that she found the go box. Because you see him staring at it, and he calls her. He doesn't, the box is there. And the first thing he does is call her. And he makes
doesn't have a plaid shirt then when he makes the first call.
There you go. But he sounds like, I don't remember the exact lines, but I remember it sounds like he's been trying to call her all day. I think he makes a comment like that, saying something to the extent of, I've been trying to reach you. And she just assumes it's because she missed the ultrasound with their friend Jenny and the baby they're about to adopt. And so basically, Liz is brushing off. She's like, I understand this is a big deal, but there's a situation, there's a case. I'm sorry I missed it. We'll talk about it when I get home. And he's like, no, this is important. I need to talk to you now. Basically, it sounds like she thinks it's about the adoption, which she does, and she's brushing that off for the job. And so she's willing to brush off their unborn child. How on earth is she going to accept, even if he came to her and said, babe, we need to talk. I need to tell you a horrible secret that I've been keeping, and I need you to trust me on this. How on earth can he trust her to trust him on that if she's willing to brush off their child? He can't. And I think that's the point where he was like, I can never tell her.
Not only that, but look at Red, who's also terrified of telling her. Listen, I hired Tom. He is trying to go as much as he can without telling her that little secret, even though Dembe tells him, you gotta tell him the whole thing. You tell her the whole thing by telling about Tom by telling her the whole thing. He's not doing that. So, and once you see Liz in a rage, you kind of get an idea that that's not something you brush.
Before you throw that coffee cup at me.
Mm-hmm.
I want flashbacks to domestic Keens before everything came out. I really want to know when she threw that coffee cup at him.
How about, I'm standing in pee. Did you take the dog out? She's demanding. She may be very sweet and she has sweet things about her, but she's not a little flower. She's demanding, and as you said, she's narcissistic. It's all about her. And Tom takes that. I think that what you say is true. They fell in love with the real person underneath the mask, the goody agent and the goody nerdy teacher. That's who the mask they were. And Liz and Tom were underneath, and they fell in love with the real, in spite of the mask, even though the mask kind of matched.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And so
The,
you've got the silence of Berlin, like we were saying, that really makes the complacency. It brings about the complacency, and then it leads into Zamani.
that is also a parallel to Red um, in The Kings of the Road. He's so happy with Liz. They're telling stories, Sure, it's a bad situation, but Red can make the best of a bad situation, and he gets complacent and he gets taken. Same as Tom, because I'm sure he wasn't expecting a Zamani to come in there and overpower him and tie him to a chair. He spent a lot of time tying him to a chair in season one.
Tied to a chair and duct taped. Like, that man spends so much time duct taped, it's not even funny.
Well, then he uses it again when he gets shot, and he ties the cowboy with duct tape. Duct tape is like one of the essential tools of spies.
Apparently so. There's this great scene in a show in a movie that Ryan was in called B-Side. It's an indie film that he did. But it's a scene with him with duct tape over his mouth, and it's a goofy scene, and like someone's coming at him with sharp object, and he's goofing off and making a face. But it's so funny because as soon as the roomie and I saw that, we're like, the duct tape! Someone duct taped him again. So
it's like wrestlers in the cars and Tom and the duct tape.
Exactly.
They each got their own thing.
Don't let wrestler drive. Never let wrestler drive.
Red crashes. I always say, to me, that image of Red surrendering is like a 747 crashing into your living room and then stopping very smoothly, getting off and says, "Good afternoon." With the distraction and all that, and getting off with a bottle of wine. Would you like some wine?
Oh God, I could see that. I feel like that's one thing I kind of want to touch on is the pilot when chaos comes down on them because they're late for work, or they're late for work the first day. Her first day on the job, late, running, chaos. Tom says 7 minutes. I don't believe she got through that shower in 7 minutes, but not looking like she did when she walked out. But she walks out. She looks great. He's like, his hair's doing the poofy thing. But,
am I the only one who think that maybe Red got his friend, the one he has at the electric company, to make sure that they were very late?
And it might be. You've mentioned that before, and I am on board with that theory. But I love it that they're getting ready to go to work, and suddenly this helicopter flies over. And I can't help but think that Tom looked up, and his pre-caffeinated brain goes,
I think he knew, oh my God, Reddington is here.
Oh no, I think that he thought they had found him. And so...
You thought that? That is interesting. I never got that feeling.
I don't think he knew it was Red at first. I really don't think that crossed... And, and that's more of a joking thing. I don't know if he actually was thinking that or not, but I don't think he thought it was Reddington, because if he thought it was Reddington, I think he would have been more ready for Zamani.
True. Very true. Or maybe what amazed me, and that's when I saw that the reaction of those two, when the helicopter comes in and she says, babe, I don't think I need the car. And I thought, oh, neither one of these two is what they look to be. She is not this goody-do girl. There is something there deep and dark. And this man is for sure not a teacher.
I got my first indication. I mean, and like I've mentioned before, I came into the fandom. It was airing halfway through season 2. And so, obviously the fandom had found out that there was something sketchy about Tom. And so I had heard, my theory as I moved through season 1 was that he was CIA. That was my very first theory about Tom, was CIA.
Yay. I love that one.
I believe that's been disproven by this point. I know that you've mentioned that you wonder if he, ever got snatched up by the spooks.
Remember how we were talking about if somebody is in the intelligence, there are things they cannot say. And my head canon is he was got at one time, somebody, they got him, and they said either you go to jail or you go to or you become an agent for us. And I think he did.
Oh,
Time will tell.
yep.
It's a crazy theory.
One of the many.
Oh
not
my
not
God.
all crazy, but yeah.
A lot of them are. I'm under no illusions. Let's talk about you were going
I was
in
on a
they're
thread there.
crashing there, they have the keys, and they're so they're like great. And now Liz is with Cooper. What did you thought about those scenes with Cooper and Liz, and she's getting ready to meet Tom, to meet Red.
I thought that it was very much she was out of her element.
Hmm.
Um, she was. I think she'd spent so much time pretending to be the goody goody that it made her very nervous that that was all about to get shattered. I mean, because you
Hmm.
see her as she's sitting there talking to Cooper, she's rubbing her hands.
Hmm.
She's very
She's robbing this
nervous.
car.
Yeah, she's super nervous sitting there. So I think that, I mean, they're doing deeper checks on her, and she knows this. She knows that they're checking into it.
The
And
things that she hasn't said to anybody, like
and
she's adopted.
I do wonder later if that crossed her mind again when everything came up with the box and she said they're going to tear our lives apart. I
Hmm.
wonder if that was part of it for her. That, it wasn't so much him, is what are they gonna find on me? What secrets are they gonna find on me?
Yeah.
But I think that she had certain things that she wanted to hide, and that thrust all of her grayness into the light. That it was not all of it, obviously, but a
Mm.
lot of things that she was suddenly under a microscope, and it was interesting. It was definitely interesting to see that because we don't see it with Tom yet. And then she goes home and Zamani. She's stressed, she's tired, she walks in, there are balloons, there's,
Balloons.
yeah, balloons, celebration. I mean, because Tom got all of that put together, because dinner was on the table. So
Hmm.
he was expecting her home at any time. Champagne, she's so focused on this that she walks straight past him, tied to the chair, to the champagne, has the champagne poured, turns around before she realizes what's going on.
And that is a very telling thing of what you were saying before, how Liz actions and words are have such a dichotomy. She is focused on this, and meanwhile she's not seeing, why is he not turning around?
Why is he not
It's
saying anything? Why, is he just letting me go? And to be fair, I mean, Tom at that point, and Tom to all points, just kind of lets her go sometimes on it and lets her finish her ramblings, either ramblings or rants or whatever she's doing, happy, sad, and anywhere in between, and lets her
I'm
finish before he actually tries to get a word in
Yeah.
edgewise.
Well, I think that Red also learned that lesson pretty fast. Just let her go, and you don't even need to lie to her because she tells stories, then she answers herself, then she make a three theories and give you an answer, and you only have to just stay
Smile.
there quiet. Yeah, and that's it. She does
Smile.
the rest.
Yep, exactly. And I just the whole Zamani scene, it was very interesting. One of the things that I found the most interesting there, Tom is tied to the chair, he's duct taped over the mouth, he can't speak, he's been beat to hell. Glasses heaven knows where, and he's sitting there and he looks at Liz, and as she's trying to comfort him, he has a look on his face and he looks at her and he starts giving her this look like, don't you say a word. Do not, it wasn't a don't worry about me look, but it was one of those, like, if you had two spies sitting there and one was getting tortured, don't give anything up for me sort of thing. And that's the look he gave her. And that was the point that I said, well, he's not just a school teacher,
Mm.
there is so much more to this man than meets the eye.
And I thought it was interesting too that a lot of people don't really analyze what Red said to Zamani. Says, did you visit Agent Keen? And he says, as you asked. Did you and the husband, as you asked. So obviously we know that what he asked about Tom was, beat him up and make sure he bleeds over that the hutch on the floor. But I think the thing that he did with Liz was designed for two things, because as everything with Red is always complicated and complex. One, to make sure that Liz got into a raging anger and did something physical to him. He was sure she was going to do it. Stab him in the neck is what she did. The second thing, Zamani says, you have a choice here. You save one American or many Americans. I think that was Red final test to see if Liz really loved Tom. If she had said, oh no, my job is to save many Americans and let him bleed and go after Zamani, then Red knew that she didn't care about Tom and she could get rid of Tom in any time that he wanted.
That's really interesting. I'd never thought about it that way, but that's a really good point, and it sounds very much like something Red would do as a test. I mean, because that's not a direct test, but it does allow the information to come forward. And something with the pin stabbing, besides the awesome comment from Red in the next episode, do you have a thing about stabbing people with pins in hotel rooms? But I find it very interesting in that episode, and then it's paralleled again in season 2. And then we've continued to see that lovely defensiveness of him. That she is always willing to defend Tom, no matter how pissed she is at him. She can be screaming and raging at him. And yet, as soon as someone threatens him, she's there to defend him. Mm-hmm. And she was even willing to pull a gun on Red. She was, I mean,
the hotel scene.
Yeah, the pin to the neck. It was early on. It was before she had any clue anything was going on. She was well in the know by season 2 when she pulled the gun on Red. And yet she was willing to hold a gun on him to defend that man. And so it speaks about the depth of the relationship. That even though there were so many lies, she had to have at least subconsciously known there was some truth there. And by that point, I think she did. Because, I mean, he'd been willing to go to prison for the rest of his life, potentially to death row, to protect her. And so,
I think the point, and we will talk more about their turning points, but I think at this point, she's desperate. She's willing to stab a criminal, a known violent criminal,
a known criminal in federal custody. He was there in federal custody. And she's a federal agent. And so she walked in with the trust of her organization that she was going to handle something correctly and stab the man in the neck.
He could have died.
Yeah.
He could have died.
It was.
And if you go back to season 3, she has your temper. And, look at what she does when she meets Rostov. Punches him in the face. And they're goons, and it was a lovely moment. And those moments are so pure, Liz. And the moments where I love her the most is when she does these things like that. And notice, it's not an uncontrolled rage that Liz is doing. However tempting it is to say, oh, she just has a really bad temper. Not really. She knocks down the lamp where the camera is. Not the other lamp. Not the fruits on the table, no. The only thing she takes down is that lamp with the camera. So there is a ruthless, controlled side of Liz that I think a lot of people miss because they go with the outward emotion and they don't realize Liz is in her own way a little undercover agent.
No, she's very good. She really is. And that's probably one reason she's so good at undercover work. And so, are we done with the Zamani bit? Or
I think we are. I think that one of the things that it would be good to establish, though, and the last thing in here is at this point, Red distrusts Tom, and Tom distrusts Red. And Liz is in the middle trying to hold on to her own sense of what do I think? What do my instincts tell me?
Yeah, definitely. And I love that scene there in when he's in the hospital, on the ventilator. She's not sure if he's going to make it. She said, I need you to wake up and tell me and tell me what's going on and, defend yourself, I think is the phrase she used. And I also love the fact so much that they paralleled so nicely that scene where she said, I wish you could wake up and defend yourself, where she didn't know what was going on, where she didn't have the answers that she wanted. And then you parallel that in season 3, where he's on the ventilator, and has been shot twice after doing something he shouldn't have been doing. And she trusts him. Because when she goes to Red, she doesn't know the entirety of what's going on, but she just waylays on him that, he did what he did because you took his job away, because you forced him into a corner. And so she's not... And I know we'll delve into this better in season 3, but I do love that parallel there. That you have that it's not just blind trust either. It's an understanding that is developed between them, and it's beautiful because and people that dislike the Keens together, I find often feel like she just brushes the past aside, and I don't think she does. I think it's an understanding of why he did what he did. There's a song that that a friend of mine on Tumblr, Chris M23, made a video for. That's just beautiful. It's One Republic. And there's a line in this song. It says, "I walked a minute in your shoes, and they never would have fit, and I figured there was nothing to lose." And Liz has walked in his shoes at that point. When she goes on the run, she's walked in Tom's shoes. She understands more the kind of things that are required in that life to survive. And I think that's one of the reasons why she's so... one of the many reasons why she's able to react so differently. There's the honesty between them, and there's the understanding. Yeah. And it's a beautiful parallel that you've got there, in which at one point she doesn't understand, and the other point she understands completely, even without all the information. And as she gets more information on it, she just understands more. And but she's also not just rolling over and going, "Oh, it's okay, honey." She's like, "No, you're stupid. You should never have done this. But I do get it. Just don't ever do it again," kind of thing.
I also think that Liz had been less than honest with Tom about her own darkness, about her own illegality, the things that she had done that were illegal. I think that Tom may have known them or not, because remember, Tom is also under it goes both ways, how much they understand each other, and versus in season 1, because you see in season 1 how Tom tells Liz, "Oh, I know all your tales. You're an open book to me." And meanwhile, Liz had known about the box for weeks. She hasn't said anything to him. She hasn't said anything to the FBI. And hadn't Ressler put a flag on him because Cooper told him? Forget it. They would have never known that Liz was keeping all these secrets. So this is true on both of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nowadays, that they, at that time, they were both keeping a mask, whether... and in the case of Tom, I think a lot of people get angry at him, saying, "Oh, there was all lies. He was lying to her. She was not being truthful." Well, he started without knowing what he was doing. He continued. And at that point, I don't know if it had happened, but there's a point where it's tough to go back and say, "Whoa, there's something tiny that I forgot to tell you. Like, my name is not what do you think my name is?" Which wouldn't even matter at the end, because that wasn't even his name either.
Well, I don't think he knew that, but
no.
But no, you're absolutely right. It's like, I keep wanting to ask people, okay, so when exactly was that point that it became easy to say, "I love you, honey. Let me tell you all my secrets"? That's terrifying. Red hasn't done it. Why can you expect Tom to do it? And it doesn't make it right, but I do understand why he was more hesitant. And like we were talking about earlier, she has a habit of brushing things off that should be the foremost of their relationship. She didn't want to spend time with the baby. She didn't, she was more willing to do work than her ultrasound, all of these things about the family that should have been the foremost of her.
Especially saying that all she wants is to have a family. But
Exactly.
actions are very different.
Exactly. And so Tom's watching this and going, I can just see the wheels turning and him going, I can't do this. I cannot tell her this, because if she's willing to put this in front of our child that we're trying to get, because he says that in the pilot, he goes, I want to do this with you, but I can't do it alone.
And he repeats that to Red when he's terrified, not knowing whether Liz made it or not in season 3. There's also an interesting parallel that you have made in the past. I can't remember if it's over what media, but you've made it to me in particular. How the different in Tom's eyes when he wakes up the first time in that hospital, and you can see, and I've watched the scenes ever since you told me, and I agree. The first time he wakes up in season 1, he has no idea where he is, and you see like the wheels. Okay, this is where I am. This is where this woman is. Versus season 3, when he wakes up and he knows exactly where it is.
Oh, Ryan is so fantastic with it because he doesn't even blink. I don't understand it because he doesn't even blink. And so you just get this shift in his gaze. And it's Jacob Phelps versus the persona of Tom Keen. And I never finished the set. I wanted to do, and I've talked a lot about this. I've discussed it on Tumblr and such. I've never done the full gift set because I'm lazy and never got around to it. But you see these little glimpses throughout season 1 of Jacob. Within, the back when Tom was still more or less a mask. I think it wasn't until season 3 that he finally decided, yeah, I'm staying Tom. In which he became Tom Keen of sorts. And but there's some very interesting shifts there, like the one you just said, that he's waking up and it's this shift into the innocent, sweet school teacher. And I don't know how to describe it. It's something entirely visual.
Mm-hmm. It's there sometimes you get adjustments like this, and I always say, Ryan is an actor that will go very, very far, because this is the same kind of little adjustments that Spader does. They're tiny. It's a shift. It's a smile. It's a little tick, and what it does is it sells the story in a second instead of a lot of words. That's what they're doing. I also want to touch on something here. Tom worked very hard to be everything that Liz wanted, but I also think that he was able to accomplish that because, as any undercover, he drew into his own self. It wasn't that he became something he was not. He just pulled out of himself the things that he thought was Tom Keen. I tend to disagree that he stayed Tom Keen.
When I say he stayed Tom Keen, I mean by the name.
Yeah.
Like he chose to keep that name.
Yeah, the name, but I think what both Liz and him understood, Liz, with the help of Red, when Red comes clean and tells her he stayed because he loved you, that's when she's able to understand, okay, that is what hurt her. It wasn't the lies, it was that he didn't love her. And it was Red admitting to her, no, he did love you. When she's like starting to put things together, even before that there were some things that were true, that there were some things that were not lies. And, they have that lovely conversation, but that's for next podcast. But in this part, they have been both very happy, and Liz have had something. And I think that is the part where Red wouldn't be able to kill Tom. And I think that, if anything else, that should have been a clue of who Red is to Liz, that he was not able to kill the man she loved.
Which is not something we can say about Kirk.
No. I think Kirk got, as Liz said, twisted when Katerina did what he did. I think that Kirk, And this is one lovely thing to what you say, that you keep saying always that Tom, the school teacher, would not have been able to survive in Liz worlds. And I think Kirk was the nerdy school teacher of Katerina. He was an honest businessman who had no idea and was not prepared to what happened in this world when Katerina targeted him, married him, and created a whole reality for him. And I think that he collapsed. He wasn't able to, and when he discovered his world went spiral out of control, he couldn't deal with it. And I think that had Liz married any other guy that was not an undercover, he would have been destroyed within months.
It would have been divorce. I mean, because the man that Tom pretended to be, the innocent, sweet, I mean, and he's sweet. He is when he chooses to be. He could also be a complete, bastard and a half. But I mean, he is the persona he put on in season 1 when he was undercover. That man probably wouldn't have taken well to a bunch of coffee mugs getting tossed at him, at all the things that had to have come up. That's the one thing that you can go back on that's canon, that's been mentioned. But you have to know that couldn't have been the only thing that happened during their first marriage before she found out about him. That there had to have been, yell fest. But he kept up with her because he was who he was. And she needs someone that can keep up with her on an intelligence level, on the darkness level. The thing I love, one of my favorite things about the Keens is that they help balance each other. He's on a very, when you start in the beginning, you see him on a very dark scale of gray. She might be towards the lighter scale of gray-ish. It's hard to tell with her because she wears so many masks. But, compared to him, she's on a lighter scale.
Yeah.
Compared to him, we're looking at a comparison here, looking on that level. But as she moved darker, he moved lighter, and I think that they met somewhere in the middle and found a balance there with each other that they couldn't have found with anybody else. People talk about, I remember when Gina showed back up, there was a big push for, oh my gosh, ship them so hard. And yeah, like, Gina and Jacob have a lot of chemistry. They would probably have a really good time together. But the entire point of Gina showing back up was to show how far he's gone. Or how far he's come when it comes to character growth. And that he's outgrown her.
Yeah. Gina was an interesting thing to have happen because the more I see Red and Katerina in the whole story, the more I think that Red found out this hard way that Katerina was not Katerina. And I think that he brings Gina with an object to get Liz to see the real Tom. And, they gotta be lovers because they were lovers. So that, we tend to think that Red knows everything, but Red is really rehashing a lot of things through Tom. I think that there's a little confusion, Red and Tom and Katerina for Red. And at that point, he brings Gina, like, no, you got to find Gina. That's a lover. And Liz tells him, but there isn't. And Red still can't let go. They wrote letters. They did something. The truth is they didn't at that point. They may have been lovers, but they obviously were lovers. But that's over. From there on, we go. I mean, Liz discovers the hideout.
Okay.
I think.
Do we not want to go into the box first? That whole fiasco with the box.
Oh, when they go to yes, that's Gina. That's of course. Let's go there.
I was gonna say from Gina to Gina.
Oh yeah. Gina, the box. That that's one of my favorite scenes. And when I saw that, when Tom finds the box, and you see that only the scene of Tom finding the actual box is only seen when Liz is looking at the video that Apple Man made.
Is it? Not. Because, yeah.
Yes, it is. It is striking the level of plotting they do in the Blacklist, because when you see it the first time, Tom is looking down in the hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he has his plaid shirt on, and you think, well, he's wearing plaid. And once I started going into like, oh, plaid means there is something that is being hidden, is not as it is, I thought, okay, well, of course, now it's the first time he's wearing plaid because he's the box. Um, it's only when he finds when he first finds it, he's just wearing a t-shirt. When he calls Liz and decides to play it, because he sits there and he talks about it, he calls her, he says, I can't talk about it right now. He puts a plaid shirt. That's when I think he actually decided, I'm going to find a way to keep on this job and keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, like I said earlier, I really do think that it boils down to he wanted to tell her, and then she put the job in front of what she thought was a conversation about their child. And he was like, if an innocent kid isn't going to get her attention and get her trust and the forefront of her thought, why on earth would she give me half a second? And any trust at all? Like, I think it terrified him. And when Tom, especially season 1 Tom, when he got scared, he fell back to what he knew. And what he knew at that point was lies and the job and undercover and manipulating the situation. And so that's what he knew, that's what he knew worked. And so that's what he fell on. And so when she comes in, I love that it's a very Red moment. Him sitting in that chair and waiting on her and pulling that box out and going, we need to talk. You
Oh,
know.
that scene was awesome.
Oh, it was beautiful. And it was very Red. Very, very much Red. Something he would do. And then it cuts out, and then you get him back the next episode. And they're screaming and yelling, and he is just going on a tangent there about that it was her job that got him gutted. It was her job that did this. You know, it's not about him. It's about her. Yada. I mean, he is just throwing the guilt trip on so heavily that it's not even funny. And
but that's what you got to do to keep what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that in there a lot of people get very angry.
And I think they do. Something really interesting, and I know I keep skipping ahead to forward, but parallels. You guys know by this point, if you've been listening for any length of time, that Jen loves her parallels. Like the air I breathe. But the fight that they had in season 4 after he went behind her back and went on the op trying to get Agnes, when she's screaming at him and baiting him and everything, he's going, I don't want to fight you. I'm not going to have this conversation. He's very calm. He's not pushing blame. She's the one pushing blame and making radical statements and this and that. And so it's really interesting to see him undercover handling things versus him as the dad,
Mm-hmm.
as the husband handling things. It was very much Tom Bond having that argument with Liz rather than Tom Keene.
Mm-hmm. He did what he had to do, and I think that one of the things in which you look at things always more on the character development, in which you're thoroughly awesome. I look at things more from my own theory, and to me, what I see is Tom was not aware of what he was doing, but Tom distrusted Red. Tom thought Red is using Liz, and I have to protect Liz. And I think that one of the things that a lot of Tom detractors and Tom haters and anti-Kins tend to gloss over or not quite understand is and we've heard your character development, which I think it's not a conflicting view. These are very layered characters. So there is a point of view that is, we're all human, independently of what genre we're watching human characters, but we are also watching a genre. And the genre of the mystery, the spy, the stakes are so high, you're talking in a hyper reality.
Yeah, that's what Megan called it on the Blacklist Exposed. It was a hyper reality. I love that phrasing. It's
Yeah.
very accurate.
Yeah. And if you're a real fan of the genre, you know that people in this world act very strange. Most people don't hack ahead to go ask people if they know the guy. They just take a picture. But it's so much more effective when you hack the head and you come with a head in a bag. That it's so most people that they're gonna shoot people don't douse them in alcohol, put a cigar on them, then have this whole conversation with the poor guys after they told you what they knew, and they shoot them because suspense is killing them. Yet with Red it works because it's a hyper reality. So what is that? And Red does it in a very fun kind of way, so you tend to forget what you're seeing hyper reality, you're seeing the stakes being so high that it makes perfect sense what Red is doing. He needs an answer, and that most expedient way, because it combines fear and horror and is shocking, it's the head. For Tom, who lives in exactly the same world as Red, that hyper reality is he feels something for this woman. He maybe not even be aware that he's deeply in love with her. But what he does know is Liz is in a vertex of danger. Red for Tom is using Liz. And Red is a ruthless man who has no compulsion about killing anything that bothers him or he doesn't need anymore, or maybe a loose end. In Tom's world, loose ends die. Berlin is another dangerous, scary man that is using Liz to get to Red. And the only thing standing, protecting Liz in his view, it's himself. I think that when you look at it this way, this is what Tom sees. Red and Berlin coming at each other and using Liz as a bait. He's not aware that Liz is Red's daughter. He's not aware that Berlin has no intentions of hurting Liz. We find that out later, but at this point, the only thing we know is Liz is in danger, and I'm the only one that can protect her. And a lot of Tom's actions from this point on will be informed by that knowledge that he's the only thing protecting Liz. And when he hits her in the warehouse, and when she illegally enters the warehouse and he's not prepared, he does whatever he needs to do, because in his mind, to me, it's, if I don't stay with her, she will die. So I'd rather hit her than her dying. I will lie to her, because if I don't do it, she will die. So he does whatever he needs to do to stay with her on the job, protecting her.
There was an interview ages ago of Ryan, and someone told him that their favorite scene of Tom was the warehouse scene where he hit her in the face and ran off. He said, well, that's twisted, but okay. And his response was that Tom is basically what you just said. That Tom's kind of the perfect soldier type. That he's a soldier doing what he has to do to get the job done. And then, just as you said, his job to himself is to protect Liz. That is his job. He tells her that as he holds her at gunpoint after their fight in the house and everything. And
I'm one of the good guys.
Yeah, I'm one of the good guys, and that's something I keep going back to every time. It's what did you say? A pin in your a pin stuck in your brain. You're like that's one of mine. The good guy comment, because it took me a long time to really come to terms with that, and I have my theories about that now, especially after his talk with Gina in season 3. But yeah, I think that Ryan's interview very much supports what you just said. Absolutely. And
I never saw that interview, but yes, it makes sense for me. And that's one I wish people that don't like Tom would make the exercise of imagining that somebody that you love, and you cannot tell them because they would never believe you. Liz would have stabbed him, shoot him, get him in a hole. She was willing to take Red and jump him in a hole to be interrogated for the rest of his life. She was perfectly fine because she was angry with him. He's doing what he has to do.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. It's not the loving way. But the alternative is not sitting down and having a lovely conversation and maybe have a little fight and go to a marital therapy. The alternative is goodbye, Liz. Liz dead.
Yeah.
End of story.
And to be fair to Tom, something that people seem to forget a lot during that scene, he does everything he can to avoid that confrontation. And when she comes in, he realizes she's there, he burns everything, and he goes out the back to try to get around because it seems like there's only one exit there. Goes and uses those sheets drying out there to shift around, to get around, trying to get to the door, and he hides behind the door. Not so that he can hit her in the face with it. He hides behind it hoping she's gonna go. That she's gonna think it's empty, she's gonna leave, call for backup, and he can leave from there. And when she doesn't, when the door moves and she's coming back around, that's when he takes the extreme measures. He does everything he can in his power to avoid that confrontation. And it's really funny because when she gets home, he's making dinner. He is the sweetest person in the world. And you have to know that he is just, I know that I can't tell you that I'm apologizing, but this is an apology dinner. I feel horrible about this. And guilt is not something that Tom's accustomed to. So that's, that must have been something else that kind of went along with the loving her. How odd that feels. That guilt that works its way in with him.
Mm-hmm. It's that moment when she realizes that was him. And to be fair, yes, he hit her. She doesn't even need, emergency service. It's a horrible thing to have done. But again, this is not your regular guy who throws a beer at you like, the Good Samaritan, because whatever, the beer wasn't cold enough, or the dinner was not on the table when I wanted to eat, or I don't know, you talk back to me. This is a whole different thing. It's I would balk at calling this abuse. It's not abuse. This is
spy on spy.
And it's it's a hyper reality that you cannot compete. You cannot make, because I ain't never seen anybody who takes a pen and drop it on my table. I have
really?
never.
I had that happen just last week.
Oh, did you react well, or was it surprising?
I did. I was like, dude, he was nice. What'd you do? Kidding.
My mom is not a KGB spy. That's not the world of anybody. So, I'm sure there is the world of some people, but they don't really watch The Blacklist or, hate Tom King. They probably know exactly what Tom King feels. So, to me, you gotta really look at those scenes as what they are. And then Liz is awesome. Liz is able to control her face, control her emotions, and make her spy husband believe he's perfectly fine.
And you would assume probably sit through dinner as well, because like I said, he was making dinner. And so if she just went, I have to go, that would have set something off, because until she walks through that, until she, no, I think it's later that night. It looks like night when she goes to Red's place.
Could be.
But it's still, if she had just left before dinner, as he was cooking dinner, that would have set off all the alarm bells. He would have known something was going on. And while I do think that he had some inclinations that she might have known, I think he was doing the best he could to ignore it. And if she had just left that night, he couldn't have ignored that.
I think that was Tom's mistake, is to think that he knew how to read her. And probably, one that he learned never ever to do again was to underestimate Liz.
If you look at him later in season 2, at the end of season 2, on the boat, there's the conversation where she's sitting there and she's going, she's saying, I just wish I'd gotten on your boat, and I know what I want. And he keeps asking her to spell it out for him. He keeps asking that. He won't take the insinuation. He's like, no, you've got to say it very blatantly to me. I think it really spooked him that he couldn't read her as well as he thought. I think it threw him for a loop. And so,
and probably make him fall even more in love with her.
Yeah, because you have to know that it's nice that he can't just predict everything. You know what I mean? It's
brings the magic back.
Yeah.
For regular people, be bringing some flowers when you don't expect, or making sure that the coffee's made. For spices, I can't read you. Oh my God, I love you so much.
She could actually throw a surprise party for him that he didn't see coming. It's cute. It's precious. I love my spy couples. And so you've got that. And so I think the last thing we have on the agenda for tonight is that Mr. and Mrs. Smith / Mr. and Mrs. Keen fight. Is that the last one we have? And then we'll split it off into the next
one. Before this, we got, Liz goes to Red. They have a very interesting conversation in which, says it's just business. And that is what Liz's heart starts to break because I think, and if you watch those scenes, you know that Red is talking from his heart. This is not something he knows. This is something he lived.
Yeah, well, now we do. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that until recently. Honestly, I hadn't read that scene that way until you mentioned it last week on the podcast. I was very angry over that. Something interesting. The wedding vows.
The wedding vows are very interesting to me because they're both saying things in an undercurrent, and yet they're both saying things are right. Liz is telling him this is going to be a hell of a ride.
And it was. It still is. Tom's comments are what really stick with me. And so Tom's vows that he used, I think that was his last-ditch effort. I think that he knew things were about, the crap was about to hit the fan.
Mm-hmm.
And that this was his last-ditch effort to go, please trust me, basically. And the lines are, when I'm with you, Liz, I feel like I don't need to pretend. I know that you accept me for who I really am. And
that is so telling.
And that's a gift I thank God for every day. And so those lines to me, I think he was trying desperately to say, you do know me. I know that you don't think you know me, but you know the man underneath all the lies, the truth and the lies. And I think he was desperate for her to hear him there. And she didn't. I would kill to find out what their vows were they wrote for that second wedding. I imagine those were breathtaking.
But look at this also, because when we go into when Liz is reading the journal on season 4, he says she was assigned to him to be in his life the way you were assigned to be in mine. And Tom answers, for which I'm all forever grateful.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me is, he was telling Liz that I love you and you know me and I am grateful for you. It's also interesting, Liz is telling him this is going to be a hell of a ride, yeah, we're going to have fun. And I think that to me, that is exactly what Red did. Upon finding out who Katerina was, I think Red did exactly what he advised Liz to do. Shut up, play the game, find as much as he does. He was also chest deep in filth, and he felt filthy and horrible, and he did what he had to do. Yeah. So I don't think that, when he said it was business, I don't think he meant Tom. I think that that's what he felt about Katerina. I think it takes Red up until they go into season 4, and he says, as much as he pains to say that was the only woman I loved, I think that up until then, he was for sure that Katrina didn't love him, and therefore that Tom didn't love Liz. I think it was a big thing for Red to be able to say to Liz, Tom loves you.
Yeah,
He
I do.
stayed with you because he loved you.
Drugs and all. Um, the next, I guess, big thing on our docket would be the newlyweds. That's a big one
Oh,
because
that goes right there after.
I have heard I have a lot of issues. People that know me very well on Tumblr know that I try to be really nice. I really do. But I have a lot of issues with people that throw certain terms around. Rape is not a joke. Rape is not to be made light of. Real women have real situations. And to toss it out there and I know some people have gotten caught up in the argument and are not trying to do this. But someone back at the beginning, I am convinced, knew what they were doing. And this is not rape. This is two people playing each other. It is twisted. It is wrong. But it is not rape. It was consensual. She was not afraid for her life. I'm sorry, but she is a clever woman. And I will fight someone on that. Elizabeth Keene is smart. And if she wanted a way around that, she would have found it. She was obviously not afraid to fight this man full on in their living room. And so the fact that she slept with him was to keep her cover, not because she was terrified of him. If she was terrified of him, she would have gone, oh, well, here's my excuse. Oh, look, wrestler's calling me. There's an op. I have to go. Or there's an assignment. I have to go. She would have found
I
a
have
way.
a headache.
Even the headache. Like, she would have found... I've heard so many people go, oh, she wouldn't fake a headache for that. Fine, she would have faked an assignment. I mean, like, there are so many easy ways that it would have made him, come out, to have gone against it. And so she chose, and yes, it made her feel dirty. It's because she thought her husband didn't love her.
Yes, that's exactly
it's
true.
not because he lied to her. While that was a huge thing, she thought he was lying about loving her. That was her biggest issue. That's why sleeping with him made her feel dirty. But she chose to sleep with him there, and he chose to sleep with... I can't imagine that was very good sex, to be honest. Like that...
Maybe it was,
Neither one of them seemed very excited about that situation. But regardless of that, it still...
Yeah, and I always say something, and I know there we differ. I think you think Tom was kind of unsure if she knew. I think, she's giving him she's talking to Craig and the fake brother and telling him, no, she doesn't know anything. I know how to read her. You think I'm going to ask her to renew her to get her in bed? You're already getting that build up to that situation. And I think that a lot of people tend to forget again that, and it's fine to forget it then. We were meant to read it wrong then. But when you get new information in a show like this, you got to go back and kind of reevaluate your entire clues. And now look at the entire clues. You see, this is probably what Red did. And Red probably felt deep in filth. Go back to that scene and watch it when he's telling her that it was business. And time is the only thing that is going to make you feel whole again. And you see how Red is not talking about her. Red is talking about himself.
It's very emotional for him right there. You're right.
Yep.
It's incredibly emotional. And we've talked about many times that Red is good about not being emotional about things. And so the fact that he was so emotional there is very telling.
Yep. And he knew exactly what Liz was saying. You think that a man is going to actually leave his daughter in a dangerous situation or in a rape situation? He didn't. He wouldn't. The only reason he was fine with Liz is because he knew that Liz was in no immediate danger, just as and he was just she was asking her to do what he has done with Katerina to keep her safe, to
And
find out the truth.
and are you really gonna tell me that Liz, as we've come to know her over 3.5 seasons at this point, has never withheld sex from her husband?
I mean, everybody got, you got, I
I
don't
mean,
want to. I got a headache. I got to get up
yeah,
early tomorrow. Hey, I forgot to tell you, but I got an assignment and I got to be at the office at 4
yeah.
in
It's
the
like, I'm
morning.
sorry, I took off for this fake, vow renewals, but I gotta go now because I took off in the middle of the afternoon, but now I have to go back for several hours. There are things that could have been used. It doesn't take a very clever mind, and Elizabeth Keene is a very clever woman. It would have been fine. And it really bothers me when this is a hot topic issue for me.
Hmm.
Obviously, gotten a little emotional myself there, but it's something that really bothers me when people throw the rape comment out, and the rape and the abuse comments get me because I know some people really believe it, and I'm not really as much talking to those people. I don't agree with them, but I'm not as much talking to those people as the ones that, if you really get down to it, they're using those terms to shut people up. That bothers
Yeah,
me.
yeah. And you know what? It is understanding of the genre. I mean, look at
Mm.
James Bond. You think every time James Bond sleeps with one of those women, he really wants her or love her? No. You think any of those women are sleeping with him because they love him or deep affection? No. You know, that doesn't make them whores. It doesn't make it rape. It's it's things that people do. There is no difference in having, truly, when it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't mean anything. It's like having dinner or having anything. In the spy world, it means very different from normal world. Again, it's not a woman that would have been beaten up if he said. She's the one that jumps in the shower with him, that is always initiating sex. Most of the time when we see them in that kind of situation, is her initiating it. So no, it doesn't fly with me on any level, on character, on genre, or anything. And again, go back to the scene and watch it when Red is talking to her about it, and you'll see the reasons Red this hates Tom is not so much for Tom as it is for Katerina. So a lot of what people say, oh, I hate Tom because Red hates Tom, or he wanted him gone. No, no. Look back in the scenes with the information that we have now, and it would be a whole different scene. And from there on, I think we go right into when he finds that Tom is gone.
She comes home. He's found the music box. He talks to her. He's seen her at
He
the.
saw her.
Oh, he did, because he tries to call her on it to see if she's gonna lie to him, and she straight up lies to him. And you can see it, briefly flicker across his face that this is done.
It's over.
Yeah, and
It's over.
it's killing him. And
And
he kisses
he
her, and
tries.
she doesn't kiss him back. Did you ever notice that one?
No.
When he leans in to say, I'm gonna go walk the dog. Can you watch the water for me to make sure it doesn't boil over? He kisses her, and she's just stands there. And then he goes and puts a leash on Hudson to take him out. Something I'd like to point out, big, mean, spy Tom, horrible person,
Doesn't
evil
leave the
man.
dog out.
Thank
Leaves him
you.
in the vestibule. I'm a dog owner, and any man who would have taken the dog and leave him in the streets, that would have been a no-no.
I don't
Forget
care if
about
you.
any rape. That would have been a bad man. I don't want him. That's a
Exactly.
dog you're talking about, your best friend.
Yeah.
So yeah, and no, notice the other thing that he does. He didn't have to go back to that house. He knew it was over. He had seen her. He was trying to salvage the relationship. Had she said in that moment, yes, it was me, what were you doing there? Maybe the conversation would have gone the other way.
And I think
That was
so. I always have felt like Tom always kind of wanted to be pushed into telling her the truth, if that makes sense, on
mm-hmm,
kind of a subconscious level, that he wanted to, but he was scared of it. Kind of like Red. I mean, Red keeps going back and forth. I'll tell her. I mean, obviously, Red had the paper that he had with the caretaker that he burned. You know, he obviously had precautions set up to tell Liz everything, and then he keeps backtracking on it. I think Tom did that quite a bit in season 1, that he wanted to be forced into that corner where she said, I'm giving you one chance. You tell me the truth, and we're going to talk this out.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would have. But it just never really panned out that way. Because as soon as she found out about him, she started playing him, and then he was playing her. And it just snowballed on them.
And I go there to another one of the conversations of Red and Liz, the tango conversation, the Russian milonga, because a lot of people misread that. Red is not talking about anything else than him and Katerina. That's what him and Katerina did, and that is what Tom and Liz are doing. It's a tango, it's a milonga. They're opponents. Each one wants something the other one. They have the truth between the two of them. That's what they're doing. And I'm sure that did Red and Katerina ever had a fight? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. The Red we see nowadays is not the Red 30 years ago.
Oh,
That's a
absolutely.
whole different man. But at any point, they're there. He takes the time to tell her she was beautiful that day, that she's beautiful that moment. He's saying goodbye to this woman he loves. And I think in that moment it hits him. He is utterly in love with her. And she's saying she's beautiful. She's saying he loved her. He's saying goodbye to his dog. And that is a moment that breaks my heart. He didn't have to do any of it. He could have just left after seeing Liz. And he risked all that for that moment, for that goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that is probably among the Keens, I'm going to say the most tender of them.
Yeah,
to me.
Just a chance.
And I'm not a romantic, because it is utterly unnecessary.
Yeah, it's a chance. It's a small hope, as he said in season 2. Mm-hmm. And so he leaves, and he doesn't fight her. He doesn't start. He just leaves. And he calls us back up and says that she knows. He gets extracted. And then Red sends people in to forcibly bring him back. And so Red initiates the violence, brings
and
him...
leaves him tied to the chair.
Yeah, tied to the chair, duct taped, and Liz interrogates him, and the first time he shows any... I mean, he's obviously trying to escape because he tries to knock the water glass over and all this. And I keep going back to that conversation. People are like... I've seen people on Tumblr say, that's when I knew he didn't care. Something to point out is that when someone doesn't handle their emotions well, and Tom doesn't. Tom's gotten a lot better, but season 1 Tom is not season 4 Tom. Season 1 Tom had spent very little time with his own emotions. Looking into his own emotions, dealing with his own emotions. He had spent more time under other people's masks, wearing other masks of other people's emotions, and living with those. And so when he's put in a situation in which there's very real, deep emotions, he loves this woman, she's begging him to say something to his wife who is dying in front of him. He has two options. He can't
handle that. He can handle that.
There's two options. He can be honest and risk his heart shattering and her heart shattering and everything he can't handle. Or he can piss her off, because anger is a much easier emotion to deal with than heartbreak.
I've done that, and I haven't been tied to a chair with a psychopath coming to kill me because I don't have the protection of her love anymore. So I've done it. Anger is a much easier way to deal with than when people are begging you and in pain. Anger is easy. You go back in anger and you get out of it. It's satisfying. It's like a dog barking. It's its own reward.
Yeah. And so he pushes on that route. He goes that way because he's been married to her for 2 years. He knows what gets her riled. And so he goes after her on that. He didn't once lunge at her. Yeah, I mean, granted, he's tied to a chair, but we have seen him headbutt with the best of them. Um, and so, like, he didn't make, any sort of threats to her. He just pissed her off. So what does she do? Her go-to is to go get a pair of pliers from the kitchen drawer and break his thumb.
And notice that Tom thinks that he can read this woman. You don't have it in you. Oh, baby, you're about to get a surprise. She does have it in her.
Oh, and I think that was the first, and I think that's one of the reasons that he thought she was going to kill him on the boat. I don't think before that he would have ever said that. But anyway, and so she breaks his thumb. He uses that to get out. He fights her until, because she continues to fight back. If he had slammed the chair into her and she didn't get up, I think he would have left right then. If he knocked her out.
She's the one that comes at him as soon as he gets out. And
Yeah.
in a second that, and to me that fight, a lot of people get very bothered by it. To me, I mean, we've seen Tom Keene in action. Tom Keene took 4 or 5 really psychopathic Russian mobsters, unarmed, because he came out there, he was totally unarmed, he has been beaten down, he was destroyed, and he killed them all, except for character that he wanted alive.
Exactly.
We've seen him do it in the bar. He went in the bar, looked at the biggest guy in the bar, and took him out.
Yep, that's what
I mean,
he's good. He is very good in close hand-to-hand combat situations. If he had wanted to hurt Liz, he could have. Instead, he got the gun, because if she'd gotten the gun, she would have killed him. And he got the gun, held her at
she dropped the
gunpoint.
bookcase on him.
Yeah, I love that scene, actually. I know that's a little twisted, but I love the
was
bookcase
crazy.
coming down.
And her face in it. It reminds me a
she's...
little bit of her face when she runs down the freelancer in episode 2, and I saw that face and I said, "Oh no, baby, this woman ain't any saint. She's a badass."
Yeah, I mean, she clocks him in the jaw. She throws a bookcase at him. She holds her own against this trained operative. She's good. But I also think he was holding back quite a bit. Anyway, he gets the gun, holds her at gunpoint. He could have killed her. He could have knocked her over the head with the gun, which, if
taking her hostage to protect himself against Red.
Exactly.
Have something to bargain.
Instead, he hands her handcuffs and says, "Cuff yourself to the banister." Tells her that he's not a bad guy. Tells her where to go look for evidence. Basically hands her, "This is who killed your father," and says, "Goodbye, Liz," and walks out. And he leaves.
And I think that one important thing is, again, Red is Liz's father. And he was in a car outside, knowing that she was totally alone. She was a rookie. She was liable to make a mistake. He was inside. He would not for a second would have left Liz alone if he thought she was in trouble. In fact, when he comes in the house, he doesn't even go and runs to her. He looks at the destruction, kind of like, one of those arguments, huh?
Saunters. He saunters in.
Mm-hmm.
And she's sitting on the couch, and it just, with the lens to look through it of Katerina now, it all makes so much more sense.
Yes. And is worth for, of course, if you hate Tom and you're happy hating Tom, that sounds very weird. But if you're happy hating Tom,
it should sound weird. Being happy to hate something should sound weird. That's inappropriate.
but if you are happy hating Tom, I mean, there's nothing that is going to make you not hate Tom. But if you have the slight thing of why a lot of people actually like Tom, go back with the view of what we learn about Katerina, so that you realize that a lot of things that Red is saying, it's not about Tom. It's about him and Katerina. This is painful for Red. I don't think that we have had any inclination up until now of the level of pain that Red has been in. He braces for him, and he's good at not showing it. But Red has been in incredible pain, not just in seeing his daughter going through this, but in rehashing what it felt for him. And you see it in any of those, like, there is nothing wrong with you. That's what love is, not being in control. And, time is the only thing that will allow you to find yourself. All of those things is him talking from his own heart
Yeah,
about his own experience.
absolutely. I do agree with that. And I was talking to someone today. I said, I felt like that, Liz and Tom parallel greatly Red and Kat, but Katarina, but that Liz and Tom are the ones that broke away from it. They're the one, and I do hope if Katarina's alive, which I think she is. I hope Red gets a second chance with her because those stories make me absurdly happy. The love lost and destroyed and utterly obliterated, and then get a second chance. I love second chance stories. I love redemption stories. So
Yeah, and obviously, Red has a thing for women like that because if you look at Madeline Pratt, I mean, they may not have gone in hand-to-hand combat, but they tried to kill each other regularly.
yeah,
She basically threw him into the Earl King, a heist. He could have gone killed. It could have been an international incident. That's foreplay, as he calls it. So
yeah.
there is a spy thing. There is this hidden reality that happens, and I think that before we finish this part, even though it doesn't apply to Liz and Tom, we should really look at Jolene and Jolene's ac- actions towards Liz and actions, and then Tom killing her.
Oh,
Because a
I
lot of
wish we'd
people
done
say,
that
oh,
one.
he was involved with her. No, he wasn't. He kissed her. You know, uh, we've done things, stupid things. That doesn't mean that we are involved in a relationship with her.
Yeah, let's go ahead and touch on that before we wrap up. We kind of got off. It's there's so much information to cover. Yeah, absolutely with Jolene. She was an undercover agent who came in with and this is another complacency issue. I think that she was, which I've always had issues with Jolene because she was obviously good enough to fool Tom for a while, but she was also seemed to have a lot of things she wasn't very good at. Like by the time Tom figured her out, I feel like once he figured it out, she became a very stupid spy. Like she was in way over her head.
I have a thing with that. Um, I know that it seems that Tom didn't know who she was, and I was on board with that. I was like, oh my God, he just found that and all that. Now, I want to point out two weird things theory wise. When you go to the board, and that's not that far after they come back from that trip, Tom has tons of pictures of Jolene following Red throughout the entire season up until then. So that's the first thing that got me thinking that things are not exactly as they seem. And the second thing is when Tom gets the cowboy, he asks, "Who sent you?" And he's not sure if it's Reddington or is two other people. So
So Lumba Day
I
and someone else, yeah.
yes, so there is two people there. That he may be the Reddington group, he may be other people.
I really hope that comes back around because I've always assumed that has to do with prior ops. And
Mhm.
I really want that to come back around because I want to know about.
In this particular case, it leads me to one thing. Either after he came back, he started gathering information, but how could he gather information from things that have happened before? There is pictures of Jolene following Red in Cuba. There is pictures of Jolene following Red in a lot of other places, plus her entire file. So I have a feeling that Tom knew who Jolene was, and Tom thought that Berlin was testing him or that someone else, that other people was testing, or that Red had sent him, or so he was seeing all this play out. And I think that when Liz uh Colson says that she, leaves him with a dinner, and the beautiful dinner, beautiful table set up, gorgeous dinner, cooked. I think that Tom decides, okay, this is a point where I'm going to start finding out what on earth is going on with Jolene. He's hurt, and
And
I
so
think that
he
he's
goes back to what he
masking.
knows. He goes back to
Yes,
what he knows.
I'm going to just use this opportunity to go at her, and he uses that because it's the only way he knows how to react. But the fact that he had all these pictures of Jolene Parker, which by the way was not an innocent woman, she was an operative, and the fact that she had hired the alchemist meant that he there was a woman who died so that she could have a fake death. There was a body there that looked like her to fake her death. So not exactly what I would call as outstanding citizen.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this is the woman, and so he obviously knows that she's dangerous. Depending on if you assume she works for Berlin. Tom knows she's dangerous, and suddenly she's showing up at his house.
Exactly.
And
She's
so,
threat. That's a threat.
yeah, and so she shows up at his house, at his home, with his wife, and he gets very testy about that because he's scared. Because not only is it possible that she's going to hurt Liz, but also blow his cover, which to him at the time would hurt Liz, both emotionally and potentially physically if he wasn't there to protect her from things she doesn't know were coming.
Exactly.
And so when I hear people talk about, Jolene was innocent, I have to stop for a moment and gather myself, because that doesn't make any sense to me. I can't imagine a scenario in which Jolene Parker was an innocent soul. I mean, she just wasn't bright enough to realize that as soon as she hung up, the cowboy was absolutely right. As soon as she hung up that phone, she was a dead woman. And
well, she was a dead woman way before, because if you notice, she gets out of there. The time passes because the cowboy sees her, snaps a picture. Cowboy meets with Red, tells him what he knows. Red tells him, fetch her. And he goes after Jolene. And all throughout this time, Tom is following Jolene. And what does Jolene does in that interim? She gets a phone call. She calls Berlin and then breaks the phone, throws it down. So Tom knows she already told Berlin what she learned. And what she learned is he's talking about his wife. He's talking about his house. She's not talking about her target, or she knows how real it is for Tom. She knows Tom is compromised.
absolutely. And so therefore she became a threat both to him and to Liz. And so the fact that we've seen Red kill for Liz. Multiple times. I can't even list them all. How many times Red has killed for Liz. So, this is not, in the scope of this show, in the scope of this heightened reality, this was not anything beyond. He was protecting his wife and protecting himself. That's all it boils down to. It wasn't him abusing an innocent woman that couldn't fight back. That's not what this was. I have a friend on Tumblr that we keep joking, that when, when the Black Widow out of Marvel gets into a fight, do people call it abuse? It's, when Supergirl gets into a fight, do you call it abuse? Just because they're women doesn't mean they can't fight. That's not how you approach life.
Yeah, so he kills her, and I think that he kills her with his bare hands as opposed to the cowboy with a gun, because it was personal.
It was kind of like Gina and Liz.
Mm-hmm. He was tired, and he wanted to make it personal.
And there were a lot of emotions going at that point, because that was right after the adoption had been canceled. He was spiraling, and this woman was threatening the last thread of sanity he had left in his little perfect life that he was desperate to keep. And so, yeah, it was very personal for him, and he was pissed, and he was scared, and everything, yeah.
And then Liz gets in the shower with his bloody hands.
Yeah. And so, I just can't imagine. Why would you not scrub your hands off? Why would you drive home like that?
Because he made a good scene.
It did, and that's what it boils down to. Mm-hmm. All right, so I think that wraps us up for this particular one, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, well, the wonderful thing about the Keens, and I say this as a Keen Squared shipper, I try to say this because I feel like so many people that don't ship Keen Squared, that are anti-Keen Squared, feel like people gloss over things. And I really don't, like, personally, I don't understand that because I know I don't. I feel like the darkness that they have seen, the terrible things that have happened, one, they have reasons behind them, but two, a great deal of those reasons is that saints don't need redemption arcs. Sinners do. You know, these people have dark situations in which they need to be redeemed from. And so that darkness helps to highlight the light that comes up later, that highlights the better times. So going over these darker times, the season 1 moments, and we'll go into season 2 the next podcast, highlighting
well,
these.
We still got a big chunk of season 1.
Yeah, the end of season 1 into season 2 in the next podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But focusing on this and acknowledging this, it just makes it all the more for the redemption that they found. And it's beautiful. It really is a beautiful story, in my opinion. And it's one of the things that makes it such a great arc.
It is. And I feel redeemed because the more now we find about Red and Katerina, because I always said Liz and Tom reflect every single theme of the show, and that's the reason I like them, and I like them together. And now that we've seen that Katerina was what kind of spy she was an undercover, she was a honey trap, but moreover, she was an undercover. We're seeing how much of what the hate of Tom in Red really is. It's not so much about Tom, it is about Katerina. And I feel like, yes, yeah, it gives me a little happy feeling about that.
It's nice when things make sense, because I've had so many things that I've kind of had a mental run of, well, these are things that really irritate me about Red, and suddenly they're making more sense, that it's not so much that it was just him being controlling and a control freak, and he is, we've discussed that, but it's not like in a bad way. He's human. He's trying to handle some extreme emotions, and they're not always handled correctly, and that's, that doesn't make it right, but it also makes it human.
And it makes perfect sense of what we were saying in our podcast about Red and Tom, how the growth of Red is really seen against Tom, because it's this growth against the same situation that basically destroyed his life.
Absolutely, yes.
And with that, I think we can wrap it up. And hope we join us for our next one, where we go from the next time Tom and Liz meet, which is when he takes her at gunpoint, into when he leaves in his boat and Liz is living with Red. Yes. In season 2, in 222.
And so that'll be the darkest moments and the redemption arc. And I know that a lot of people left some comments about our question of the week. We'll probably cover that at the end of next week's, because we're going to be recording these back to back, and so we'll go ahead and cover those.
Keep leaving them.
Yes, absolutely. Please keep leaving them.
We love the comments, and we love to be able to discuss our opinions with you guys.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter. And obviously you can listen to us on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. And so we hope to hear some feedback from you. We hope that we're making this hiatus a little easier for you guys, because I know personally, hiatus kills me every time.
It does. They're terrible.
It's not fun. It's like I'm stressed during the show, and then when the show stops, I'm going, no, wait, come back. I want that stress
my
back.
Crazy theories grow like mushrooms, but what can I do? They come in at night, so, they like stealth things and pins in my brain, and now I gotta go at them. But anyway, hope we make this easier for you.
And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.